over, baby! And it is pretty damn clear who is winning NA Valorant right now. The Guard were the team who were potentially the most talked about in the lead up to NA Challengers this stage. Why? Because they're good. No, it's not just that. The Guard were one of the most notable teams in 2022 in North America, especially in Stage 1, where they beat Optic to become the first seed going into Masters Reykjavik. And this version of the team in NA Challengers right now is, to all intents and purposes, the exact same team. Other than Sire Player, who went to Korea to play on T1, and the coach MCE, who went over to Cloud9, all of the remaining Guard players are still on the roster. And I want to put this as the first reason that we're seeing the Guard find so much success right now. A lot of the other teams in NA Challengers, like G2 and M80, have cores that have played together in the past, but not necessarily fully pre-established rosters. And the teams that do have that, like FaZe or Shopify, haven't seen the same level of success that the Guard have in the past. Keeping 4 of your previous players isn't a guarantee for success, especially if that 5th player had a particularly big impact in how those players all played around each other. But in this case, I actually think XNRG Tex has been a pretty ideal replacement. Tex isn't necessarily that player who's going to go off and do everything on his own, but he has slotted in well with the support of his teammates. Whether working alongside JonahP in a defensive setup or being the player to break into a site, he's carried his weight for the team pretty well. And that support from the rest of the team is pretty important to note. I think that the current meta plays so well into the hands of these players on the Guard and their strengths and the roles that they like to play in. One of the problems that I think was a bit of a setback for the Guard in 2022 was the fact that they had to kind of shuffle everything based on who it was who was going to be playing Chamber. Sometimes it was Net, sometimes it was Sire, but either way, someone somewhere was going to have to flex their responsibilities a little. However, in this current meta, we have everyone on the roles that they like, and I think this stands out the most for 2 particular players. 1, Net, and 2, JonahP. Net was always a very skilled and diligent Killjoy player, and on so many occasions in the NA Challengers game so far, his utility has been a massive contributing factor to the team's success. At times, it has been enough to guard a side almost by itself, something we see top-level Sentinels do across a number of teams. But it has also been really key in other instances, for example, when placed in A-Link on Pearl as a rotation trigger. In this case, it allowed the Guard to pull off a pressuring retake after Trent used the information to encourage his use of the Hunter's Fury, and Net was able to retake the space in A-Link once Orr had pushed onto the site. It's also been something the Net has used in an effective utility trade to deny much more expensive utility from the enemy team. When Disguise placed their lockdown to try and make space to break into the B site on Ascent, Net's pre-placed nanoswarms were enough to hold them back in B main, where the Guard could get the necessary kills with their LOS from Defender spawn. With JonahP, his room to play initiators like KO and Sky have combined his mechanical ability and his resourcefulness to be able to be the sole reason for a lot of 1 rounds. His utility management is borderline perfect. For example, when the Guard are forced to try and retake the B site on Pearl, it seems a little shaky due to the lack of space they control on the site and the fact they have to all feed in from Defender spawn. After Trent's recon bolt confirms no one is on the site, JonahP's utility systematically helps the team cover all other possible post-plant positions, knife into connector for Valyn to peek, fragment into the smoke to draw out any defenders, and flash into elbow to lead himself in. As a direct result, a restricted retake attempt becomes extremely clean. Even when it's solely about supporting himself, the point still stands. His solo retake on the B side of Ascent is aided by his full arsenal of utility and how he plays off of it. It's so important to note how well JonahP takes space and goads enemies into space that he controls as well. In many cases, without the pressure JonahP applies with his aggressive pushes, the Guard would likely relinquish a lot more breathing room to their opponents. It's also pertinent that in these early round instances, JonahP is never baited into using more than just his knife, which is a big reason why he can be so resourceful in the late rounds. And I think that point about not being baited is a particularly important one for this team as a whole, because a lot of the way that the Guard play is very unpressured. The Guard will rarely make premature rotations or let another team get into their head. The information that they play off is from truths that they can determine with their recon. It just so happens that their recon is really good. This so far has made attacking sites quite expensive for enemy teams, but also on rounds where an enemy team may want to start expending ultimates, there's a pretty decent chance that the Guard are going to have some kind of retaliation in pocket. For example, on Pearl, Zeldris used his showstopper, getting no kills, and was immediately traded by JonahP, pushing into him. Ilias used his lockdown in A main to try and clear the A site, which the Guard destroyed. When all got the spike down, they popped their Cosmic Divide in an attempt to block off the backside locations, but were immediately matched by the Guard's own, cutting off both Link and Main, the very locations of Or's post-plant positions. Even though Or had nanos on the spike site, it didn't stop the Guard from achieving a defuse before the attackers got aggressive. All in all, Or expended 3 ultimates, all of which were in some way mitigated by the Guard. The question is, are the Guard going to keep being this good as the stage continues? Because you could argue that the opponents they've had so far are maybe a little bit less challenging than others. I think M80 is going to be the real challenge in their group, and with players like Koalanoob and Xander and actually Nismo as well, are all going to put up a pretty tough fight against their counterparts on the Guard. I think overall the important thing though is that the Guard just haven't particularly been that challenged yet, or weren't really that efficient with their utility, especially not as much as the Guard have been. And with DSG, they were often either too passive to be audacious to actually break into any kind of site, or if they did succeed in that first move, they would quickly run out of information afterwards. So it feels a little disingenuous to be making like a, steadfast judgment after just the first 2 weeks. But from what we have seen so far, it looks like, at least in their group, the Guard are a lot more coordinated and a lot more effective than the other teams that they're going up against. But what we can say is that for now, the Guard are wrecking NA Valorant, and it feels very reminiscent to how it was this time last year. Let me know what you guys are thinking of the Guard at the moment. I know a lot of people expressed a lot of surprise and disappointment that these players didn't make it into franchising, and to be honest, kind of same, but they're looking like they're kind of proving themselves here. It'll be really interesting to see how they do play against M80, but to be honest, I really want to see them play G2, although that's going to be a little while now as they're going to have to get to playoffs to do that. But I think that there is definitely something really special here with this team, and I'm really excited about them. So let me know what you guys think, but for now, I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.